So what are the common types of storage you are using? Storages you are using in your systems. In PC and laptop, you will use hard disks.
And
In your smartphone, you will use ROM, read-only memory, and you can use USB pen drives. That is
hard disk.
external storage devices, external hard disks, internal hard disks, ROM. All these are storage devices. Storage. So in computers and in laptops and PCs, desktop PCs, you use a common storage known as hard disks.
Hard disk.
So when you use hard disk, you must first divide the hard disk space into different partitions. So you cannot just use a hard disk in a computer. The operating system must first divide this partition, the hard disk, into at least one partition. In case of Windows, it is C drive. In case of Linux, it is forward root partition. So in Windows, you have C partitions like C drive and D drive. Once you create partitions like this, you must format these partitions using file system. Then only you can access the storage space in these partitions, and you can store the files in different locations. So what is file system is actually a mapping between the files and the locations on the hard disks known as sectors. So hard disk is divided into tracks and sectors. So track is circular the regions in the concept. So hard disk is first divided into concentric circles known as tracks. These tracks are further divided into sectors. And so each and every operating system will have their own sector size defined for a file system. So file system will use a sector size. In these sectors, you are going to store the files. And when you read a file, the sectors are read from the hard disk. For that, you need file system. So before you partition the hard disk, you must use a partitioning mechanism known as, so earlier partitioning mechanism was MBR partitioning method. So this was used with the older basic input-output system, that is BIOS. Nowadays, we are using a partitioning method known as GUID partition. This comes with UEFI, Unified Accessible Firmware Interface. So MBR partitions allowed you to use 2 TB hard disks. So maximum hard disk space will be 2 TB. And in that 2 TB, you can create 4 primary partitions. And one of the primary partitions can be converted into extended partition, which can be further divided into logical partitions. But in case of GUID partition, you will divide the entire. So it can support about up to 8 zettabyte storage space, and you can divide the hard disk space into 128 primary partitions. So that is these are the main differences between GUID and MBR. So these are the file systems used in Linux: ext2, ext3, Razer, FS, XFS, DT, RFS. In Windows, you can use FAT32, XFS, and
NTFS.
NTFS. These are the partitions, common partitions used in Windows. So first, we will divide a hard disk into partition. So in Linux, all the devices are found in /dev directory. So your hard disk will also be found in this /dev directory. So the first hard disk you will see, if it is a SCSI hard disk, you can see it as a SDA device. And if you divide the hard disk into partitions, you will get the first partition as SDA 1. The second partition will be SDA 2. The second hard disk, if you have a second hard disk in your system, you can see it as SDB. And first partition in this second hard disk will be SDB1. In Windows, hard disks are identified as disk 0, then disk 1. Then you can see C drive here, see other drives here. Okay. Now, so once you create a hard disk, you must format the partitions with the MKFS command. MKFS stands for, so that to create partition, you will use fdisk command. To format the hard disk partitions using uh, commands, you must use MKFS command. -p is the option to specify the file system type, and you will specify the partition name like this. Once you create, format the partition, you must mount the partition onto a folder. Then only you can use it. So for mounting the hard disk partition to a folder, you can use mount command, mount /dev sdb1. This is the partition, and mount to this folder. To unmount the partition, we can use part, see, unmount, you mount, not unmount, you mount. We are going to see all these things here. So before we start the practicals for this, we need to add a new hard disk to the virtual machine. So before that, I want to show you something. See, there is a command that is not in this notes. You must write down this command. The command is lsblk. lsblk. This will show you the hard disk arrangement of your system in a tree format. So you have SDA hard disk here. Two partitions are available. In applications, you have a tool called, into system tools, you have a tool called, not in tools, utilities, you have disks tool. So here you can see the system as see part hard disk as /dev/sda, and this is the first partition, so it is /dev/sda1. This is the second partition, so it is /dev/sda2. So I am going to shut down this system. Now I will add a new hard disk to the system. So for that, I will select hard disks, click add button. Now hard disk is selected, click next. I want to add it as a SCSI hard disk. Okay, click next. Create a new virtual hard disk, click next. How much space it will use? 20 GB. Store the disk as a single file, click next, and finish. So it has added new hard disk. Click OK. Now you can see the hard disk here, 20 GB. Now start the system once again. Who is this Tahir Ali? Okay, log into the system. Okay, let us connect to the system using PuTTY. Two dot 168.43.61. I think it is 61. Yes, so 15. So if you use LSBLK now, you can see two hard disks, correct? First one is SDA, and you can see second one is STD. SR0 is the CD drive. There are no partitions in this. The size is 20 GB. If you go to the graphics, go to applications, utilities, disks, so you can see the second hard disk here. There are no partition and its name is /dev/sdb, right? Hello guys, yes or no?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So let us see how can I create partitions. So first you can check the partition information using fdisk disk -l on a disk drive name /dev/sdb SDA. So it is showing that this system, this hard disk has two partitions, SDA1 and SDA2. If I use the same command on /dev/sdb, it will not show any partitions here. Why? Because there are no partitions. We did not create any partitions. So to create a partition, you can use this command fdisk/dev/sdb. That is the disk name. Now here you cannot see anything. So you can press M for help. So this will show you the help system. So here you can use the commands like N is the command to add a partition, D is the command to delete a partition, and W is the command to save and exit from this interface. And you can change the partition ID using P. So system ID. So Linux systems use partition ID 83. If you are using swap partition, you must use 82. So we will see that also. So I want to create a new partition. So I will press End. So I want to create a primary partition. By default, it is primary. And if I press Enter, it will select P. So I am pressing Enter. Now I need to choose the partition number. By default, it is 1. So if I press Enter again, it will select it will create the first partition. Then it needs to the first location, the starting location for this partition in the hard disk. That is, you can start it from 2048. So by default it is 2048. If I press Enter, it will select 2048. Now
Yes.
you can specify the size of the partition. So you can use plus operator. So I want to create a partition with 5 GB space. So I can use 5. Then I will press G. G stands for GB. So this will create a new 5 GB partition. So I have created one 5 GB partition. And so if I press W, the partition information has been written to the partition table. So if I use fdisk -l/dev/sdb now, it will show you one partition with the partition ID 83. So I need to create one more partition with partition ID 82, that is for swap partition. So I will use the command fdisk/dev/sdb again. So press N for creating new partition. See, I will create it as a primary partition. So I will press Enter. I will create the second partition. By default, it is 2. Press Enter. So partition first sector, by default, it is 10487808. Okay. Partition size, I will select +3. 3 GB partition. Now I want to change the type or ID of the partition. For that, I can use which ID I want to use. I can use L command. This will list all the IDs you can use. So if you want to use it as a Windows partition FAT32, you can use ID1. NTFS, do you have partition ID for NTFS? Is it available here? Check. Yes. If you want to save it as an NTFS volume, you can say select 86. There are two types here, volume sets. So 86 and 87. See, but I want to save it as a virtual swap space. Swap space. So I am going to select change the ID of the partition using by pressing T command here. So T. Which partition ID you want to change? Second partition, yes. And I don't want to, so okay. 82, that is the partition ID I want to use, yes. Now I want to save the changes to the partition I have created. So it has written to the partition table. If I use fdisk minus L, sorry, minus L slash dev slash SDB, you can see there are two partitions. One is Linux partition, another one is a swap partition. But if I use ls blk command, you can see the partition types are here with the size, but it is just it does not have any other information where it is mounted, what type of it is ID. So first you must format the partition using mkfs command. So mkfs make file system minus T. T stands for type. I want to format this using file system type ext4, and I want to format the slash dev sdb1 partition. So it has formatted. Now I want to create a directory mount. So I will create a directory called mkdir data. So the slash data. Now I will mount this partition mount slash dev slash sdb1 2 slash data. So it has mounted to that directory. Now for the second partition, I want to format it as a swap partition. So mk swap, it is another command, mk swap slash dev, slash dev slash sdb2. So it has formatted that with the swap partition information. And now I want to make the swap partition on in the file system. So mk swap on, I can use swap on slash dev slash sdb2. Now if I use lsblk, will show you all the information. If you go to your GUI and check the utility disks utility, you can see all this information set up here in your system. So go to applications, utilities, click disks, so click a second disk. So this is the first partition and it is mounted at the slash data, right? And this is the stop partition that is also swap partition. Clear everyone? Hello guys. That is all about partitioning the storage.
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
sir, one question, sir. If the hard disk already have data, so how it will be partitioned into the data will be partitioned?
Did you create partitions in Windows?
No, sir.
No, you studied about the creating partitioning, right? Partitions in Windows.
Yes,
You studied it, right?
yes, sir.
See, how will you create partitions in Windows?
By yeah.
Yes. Tell me. How will you create partitions in Windows operating system?
Can't remember, sir.
Anyway, you created, correct?
Yes.
So when you create partitions there, will you lose the data?
No, sir.
No? Are you sure? Are you sure?
Hmm.
See, you already have studied Windows. That is why I am asking you this question. Otherwise, I will not ask. Right? Without studying how to create partitions and everything, and without knowing that, without remembering that, how can you say that you have studied Windows operating system? Whatever it is, Windows 10 as well as Windows Server. Which Windows Server you studied? Version 2012 or 16 or 19? Which one?
Windows 10.
At least when you installed Windows 10 in a virtual machine, you created partitions, correct? Otherwise, you cannot install, right?
Yes.
So when you create a partition, will the data uh, be saved or will it be destroyed? What have you seen?
I think it will be saved.
Where it will be saved? Are you sure? See, you should be 100% sure. Otherwise, don't tell me this answer.
Okay.
So there is no, I think, scenario here because you are playing with data.
Yes.
So you cannot play with the data. Do you know the easy way to lose a job in IT?
Yes, sir.
The easiest way to get lose your job in IT sector, in IT field, if you are working in infrastructure management services. If you are not able to save user's data, user has lost his data, you are not able to restore his data. In this case, the next day you will get termination letter. So you are playing with the data. So, and you don't know how to protect the data. So user wants to create one more partition in his system, and you are creating a partition without being sure that the data will be lost or not. How will you do that, Mugul? Think about it.
Yes.
So please take the notes, everyone.
Done, sir.
What do you mean by security in IT? Can anyone answer this question? Security in IT. General question to everyone.
Avoiding the hackers to taking the data from the industry.
The data, right?
Yes.
See, data. So how much, see, how very much in the important data in information technology do you understand now? See, it is not, see, security in IT does not mean protecting your family and friends. It is protecting the data, right?
Yes.
Isn't it? It is not protecting your printer or a monitor or a CPU or something else. It is protecting your data. Where are all these data are stored? Where all these data are stored?
Hard disk.
Hard disks. And where are you creating partitions?
Hard disk.
Hard disks. So when you create a partition in a hard disk, if you are not 100% to 100% sure whether it will be saved, whether it will delete or destroy the data, will you go for that?
No, sir.
So think about it. Rest of the things you must find yourself. Okay.
Yes.
Bhagat. Hello, Bhagat. Kale Bhagat. Bhagat,
Yes, sir.
where are you from? Where is your location?
I'm from Maharashtra, sir. Pune.
Oh, yes.
Nanded, sir.
See, okay, where is the location in your name?
Yes, sir.
Where is the
Hello.
location in your name? Have you specified the location in your name? You did not, right?
Mhm.
Do it. And Malar. Malar.
Yes, sir.
Is it Malar talking to me?
Sir.
Okay. What is TN?
What is
TN.
PN?
Hmm.
Come again, sir. I can't hear.
What is TN? TN. TN in your name.
Tamil Nadu.
See, if everybody is using this kind of acronyms, how we will know?
Tamil Nadu is a big name, so short form again.
See, you can see very big names here, Faridabad, and there is Hyderabad also. Bangalore is also very big. See, Bangalore. Tamil Nadu is not a very big name. How many letters are there? Can you tell me? In Tamil Nadu, how many letters are there?
9
Nine,
letters.
right? 9 letters, isn't it? Hello.
Yeah.
See,
Yes,
here
sir.
students are using Visakhapatnam. Check how many letters are there in Visakhapatnam. 1, 2, 3,
12,
4,
I
5,
think.
6. 12 letters. So is it a very big name, Tamil Nadu?
Yeah, it is very big letter.
It is not big. See, because Visakhapatnam is more it's lengthier than Tamil Nadu, and the students are using Visakhapatnam. Jyoti, you check.
Okay, I will use full name.
No, see, you don't feel proud about your place. What can I do? How can I help you? This is the last class. You don't need. But in the future, don't use this. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Right. See, follow the name format if it is very big. Even if you write 3 or 4 words, who cares? You are following the name format. Let's just follow it. That's it. So in networking, so you have studied CCNA, right? What is a network?
To share data.
Ale Bhagat. Kale Bhagat or Kail
Yes,
Bhagat.
sir. Yes, sir.
To share data.
Add location also into your name.
Okay, okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yes, who is answering
Yes,
this question?
yes, sir.
What is a network? Malar. Gulmohar
To
Malar.
share information.
Yes, share information. Yes, very good answer.
One device to
Any-
another device.
Yes, very good. Any other answers for
Two
network?
PC able to communicate with each other.
Yes, communication. Yes.
Network is a set of intelligent
Network,
devices.
network
Yes,
is a
that-
collection of computer with that
Yes.
purpose of sharing information to server.
Sharing information. Only for sharing information or does it have any
Resources.
other?
Resources.
And you have studied very so many things in your CCNA class, correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Bhagat, Kale Bhagat.
Yes, sir.
Add your location with your name. Again and again, I'm telling you this. So what is a router? Anyone?
A router is a network device which is used to connect to different networks. And is also called as used to routing purpose.
It
It is used
uses
in
a packet for sending a data.
What is the switch?
He uses a MAC
Switch is
address
a-
for sending the data.
So what is router using for sending data? Switch is using MAC address
IP
for
address.
sending data. Are you sure? Okay, anyway, all those details you have studied about networking in CCNA class. See here, I